Hey folks, Ben Gilbert here with Engadget, and we have Activision Publishing CEO and President Eric Hirshberg, and we are going to talk a little bit about your presence at Gamescom here. You guys are showing Call of Duty Ghosts, and there's a little bit of presentation on Destiny, the Bungie game, and Skylanders, of course, the major franchise that has swappable toys. And this year's game is Swap Force, I believe.
Swap Force is the new one.
So I'm interested in hearing your take on the kind of next-gen stuff, right? You guys are making a pretty big investment in next-gen with Call of Duty Ghosts this year, of course, and Destiny is next year, I believe.
Yes.
I'd like to hear what that means for Activision, right? What does that entail in terms of ramping up all of your studios towards moving into a completely new ecosystem?
It's a big investment, and it adds a lot of complexity to the development process. Making great games is complicated enough, but making them for multiple, not just platforms, but multiple generations of platforms, the same games, adds a lot of complexity and moving parts and additional investment that's required as well. We made the decision with Ghosts, for example, to make the same game on the current gen as we're going to make on the next gen, and just have them be different versions of the same game. But we chose this year to invest in a new engine for Call of Duty to maximize the graphic capabilities of the next generation of hardware, as well as the audio, which makes a much bigger difference than people would probably initially think, but has a huge impact on the gameplay experience. But ultimately, the capabilities of the hardware quickly become secondary to the creativity of the game itself. Each and every year with Call of Duty, we have to do two things. One is we have to deliver the game that people have, millions of people have fallen in love with.
Sure.
But we also have to give people new reasons to come back and inject new innovation and fresh ideas into it each and every time. So, quickly the capabilities of the hardware become secondary to what's going to make it a fun game, what's going to make it fresh, what's going to make it new. So I think that what you'll see is that the next gen game is going to be superb, but I also think it'll be the best current gen game we've ever made, because the current gen game is going to benefit from all the investments that we've made for the next gen.
It's especially interesting case with something like Call of Duty, because at the end of a generation we tend to see the best stuff of the generation, right? It's all the knowledge of working on that platform or those platforms for so many years really culminating in the best content, and something like Ghosts straddles those, right? It's able to take advantage of those years of learning from the current platforms, and at the same time take advantage of the graphical prowess that you can get out of the new systems.
What you're saying is really true, and I think that it's an interesting experiment to just go back and look at what state of the art looked like, even in the same generation at the beginning, what we were able to do with the same machines 5 years or 6 years later with facial animation, with atmospherics, and just look at what Call of Duty looked like at the beginning of the current generation with some of the best developers in the world, getting every ounce of fidelity they could out of the same exact machines, and look at what they were able to do towards the end. So now we're sort of, it's chutes and ladders, right? We're back to the beginning with a new console generation, and what looks like a fairly big leap forward today will one day we'll look back and go like, wow, we thought that was good at the time. So it's one of the cool things about this industry is that you continue to, there's such a tight relationship between the creative product and the technological capabilities of the hardware.
And it's also something that you guys are doing with Call of Duty Ghosts is kind of shepherding people to the next gen on the PlayStation platform, right? You guys are engaging in, I can't remember exactly the name of the program, but it costs $10 essentially to get the new version of Ghosts on PlayStation 4 if you've already owned the PlayStation 3 version. So maybe you get it for the holiday or something, and you buy a new PlayStation 4, and then you want to play that game on the new console, and that's bridging the gap, right? It's an interesting way to kind of help shepherd in that next gen.
Well, and to be clear, we're participating in programs from Amazon and GameStop allow you to do the same thing on the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One. So for all of our fans, we have a fairly affordable and seamless way to upgrade to the next gen for a limited time, when you're ready. The reason we're doing that is simple. We want to make it as seamless and frictionless as possible for our fans to upgrade, because a console transition like this year creates a lot of excitement on one hand, but it also creates a lot of hesitation on the other, because people are they don't know which platform they're going to play on. They don't know if and when they're going to upgrade to the next gen, and so people are more hesitant to dive in and buy content. Should I keep buying content for my current machine if I'm going to get the next one soon? I'll just So we say, hey, look, buy with confidence. You buy Call of Duty Ghosts for the current gen. It's going to cost you $10 to upgrade it to the next gen with one of these programs.
And also speaking to the kind of Call of Duty has been the big annual franchise at Activision for a long time, and Destiny is I don't want to say the next big franchise, but hopefully it is.
But there's one in between that you forgot there.
Well, there's of course Skylanders. Skylanders is of course the big elephant in the room always with Activision, right? It's the game that I think the press easily forgets about, the hardcore gaming press, but it's such a mass appeal game, right? It's for a younger audience, but it's been a huge success for you. For you guys, right?
Yeah.
And regardless, though, Destiny it seems like a different thing from Activision, right? Not necessarily gameplay-wise, but as a service platform. It seems more like a persistent world kind of thing, and it's a transition away, maybe not a transition away, but a different approach than Call of Duty, which is more of an annual thing. And maybe
yes
I'm wrong.
and no. I think that the way to describe that game is that it brings together some of the most appealing elements of the first-person shooter genre and the persistent world MMO genre, but it's not an MMO. And so I think that when you describe a persistent world and you describe a world that's alive and that where the character progression and the sort of online stature and social elements of the game borrow some things creatively from the MMO world.
Sure.
People assume that it is, for a long time, the perception was that it was going to be a subscription service. It's not.
Right.
So I think that the process of consuming Destiny will probably be very familiar for people who you can opt in. It's completely up to the gamer whether or not they want to buy additional content or that sort of thing. So it'll have some differences from Call of Duty and some similarities to Call of Duty as well. But the big differences are in the gameplay.
Of course,
the feeling of the game and the creative approach of the game. I think the most innovative thing about Destiny is not the fact that it's a service as you described, but that it's a shared world shooter. The fact that you are playing a first-person shooter in story mode, against AI and experiencing the story and the plot of the game unfolding, and can bump into other live people who are inhabiting the same world and who have an impact on your story. It's a pretty cool moment, and that's what we demoed at E3, and that's what the demos here are centered around, is showing people that kind of living world for a first-person shooter. It's very cool.
Well, I think I speak to it as a service just because it sometimes feels like hard to wrap my head around something like that, because like what you're saying.
I'm trying to demystify it because I think
Absolutely.
there will be a product that you buy on a disc, and there will be additional content that you buy. So in that way, it'll be very similar to what you do with Call of Duty. And I think that with Call of Duty, we had to retrofit that into it. It was never sort of conceived that way at the beginning, but there was such a long tail of demand for the game that the DLC business was born for Call of Duty, and now it essentially is a service too. You buy a game in November, and a lot of our fans play it all year long and continue to buy map packs, and now we've in Black Ops 2 we introduced micro DLC, digital item sales, and they've been very popular as well.
Of course,
in many ways, it's become a service over time. Destiny will sort of be born modern. It's born with that idea in mind, that kind of long tail, heavy engagement, deep world design is sort of baked in.
It's interesting that you describe it as born modern. I think that's a great way of putting it. It seems like a lot of these next-gen experiences, like stuff like Destiny, seem really different in that there are these different things that you can do with the new next-gen stuff, the persistence, and the kind of blending of multiplayer and single-player stuff, where you're, again, like bumping into people and stuff like that.
But what's interesting is that it's merely coincidence that the next console cycle is happening this year, fairly adjacent to when Destiny will be coming out to the world. So when it was first pitched to us by Bungie, it was pitched as a current gen game with the same vision. So this is what I was saying before about, I think that there is almost sometimes an overemphasis on the hardware when really it's about the creative ideas of the game. And so their idea to do a game that brought together the best elements of first-person shooters and persistent world games was the idea, and it was the concept that we fell in love with and got behind. And it's been a big investment to obviously bring that vision to life with them. But they're a great developer and they've got a great vision, and that's why we're emboldened to take a big gamble on the game.
Absolutely. And to switch gears a little bit, just to speak specifically, although this may be not necessarily a point of interest, the hardware itself, right? Like the abilities of the consoles. What's the kind of big deal about the next gen that should sell people on this stuff? What's the most exciting for you guys as developers?
I think the most obvious thing that people kind of grasp the quickest or the graphic differences.
Sure.
They're the things with the most curb appeal and the most immediacy.
That's
not
kind of the launch stuff we see, right?
Yeah,
like that's
exactly.
the first hit, and then
Yeah.
there's the kind of
I mean,
waves
our
of
reveal for Call of Duty Ghosts this year was a tech demo,
Right.
where we walked people through an empty level and showed them, facial animation and what
Sure.
water looked like going over a rock, and how the lighting and the atmospherics worked, because it was a big step forward for the look of that franchise.
Absolutely.
And it was partially due to the new engine, partially due to the increased capabilities of the hardware, and people were impressed with that. But I think the things that will actually define this generation don't have as much to do with graphics and have more to do with connectivity. And we did, a few years ago, we were kind of ahead of the curve with the second screen trend in console games, and we did Call of Duty Elite, and we were one of the first ones, maybe the first one, I can't remember, but we had two-way connectivity between your tablet or your smartphone and
Right.
the console, so you could work on your loadout of your character on your commute home, as long as you're not driving.
Of course.
And
I live in New York, thankfully,
right,
so it's easy. It works.
And then it would be waiting for you, when you got home to fire up the game. That
Sure,
night,
sure,
so
sure.
that was really tough to pull off with the current hardware, because things like smartphones and tablets and social networks and YouTube, they didn't exist when the Xbox 360 or the PS3 came out. So those machines just weren't built for that kind of connected ecosystem. The PS4, the Xbox 360 were built with those trends in mind.
Xbox One.
Xbox One.
Sorry, just wanna make
Xbox
sure.
One and
No
PS4
worries.
were built with that kind of connectivity in mind. So you've seen, whether it's the share button on the PS4 or
Sure.
the second screen, experience baked into the did I reverse it again?
No,
the
you're
PS4
right,
and
you're
the Xbox
You're
One.
absolutely right.
They're designing it with these things in mind. So I think the same way that that Xbox Live and the PlayStation Network led to the big trend in this generation being multiplayer games, I think that some sort of connectivity and social amplification of games is probably something you'll see a lot of creative activity around.
I'm excited to see more about that stuff in the coming years.
And you're seeing some of our early renditions of this with Ghosts and the metagame that we've created with Clan Wars. We've had a second screen for a couple of years on Call of Duty now with Call of Duty Elite, but this year we're taking it to a different level where it's actually a separate game.
Right.
And the cool thing is that unlike say a normal mobile game where there's no relationship between the game on the tablet and the game on the console, you're actually leveling up in both worlds.
Right.
So you have a good game with your clan on the console. The next time you check in on Clan Wars, you're going to have climbed up the leaderboard, in that game, and vice versa. So
Sure.
one hand washes the other. And then obviously with Destiny, it's a game and a social network kind of all in one. It's a very social, connected, persistent world game, even though it's got all the adrenaline and action that you would expect from a Bungie shooter.
Okay, and the last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was we spoke about this a little bit before. I'm personally super excited about Oculus and virtual reality as a platform, and it's something that I've been trying to speak with the kind of big guys, right, like the Activisions of the world, to see their take, because it's still a pretty small thing. It's still pretty early. There's just dev kits out there. There's no consumer model,
Right.
and it's the PC based, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I'd love to hear how you feel about it, how you've experienced it, using it, and that kind of stuff.
I have used Oculus, and it's very compelling and immersive experience. I'll just speak as a consumer. For me, it's kind of got an intensity to it that makes it more, sort of small doses.
Sure.
They've
spoken to this themselves even a little bit in
Okay,
terms
I
of
didn't know
acclimating
that.
people, and
But
because
I
it's
feel
tough,
like
right.
things like virtual reality, they've been around, versions that have been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Helmets and glasses that are completely immersive. There've been a lot of runs at this, and I feel the same way about 3D, where every once in a while it comes together with a piece of content like the movie Avatar,
Sure.
or something where it really is additive. But most of the times, I find that it's sort of a layer just kind of spread on top of content that probably didn't need it.
Sure.
And one of the things about games as a medium is that of all of the creative media and all the art forms that we consume, it might be the one that's most tied to the technology of the hardware. The way you watch a movie, the way you read a book, the way you listen to a song.
It's pretty static.
Yeah,
the most part.
screen might get a little bigger from
Right,
year to year.
right.
The seats might get a little more comfortable, or the resolution of your TV might get a little higher. But the way we sit and consume that art form has remained utterly consistent. And I actually think there's an advantage to that, because it makes all of the onus on the creator of the content
Sure.
to engage you. And there's no technological leap forward to kind of hide behind.
Right.
So
right.
I feel like the consistency that you're seeing, some people have lamented to me, it doesn't seem like as big a leap forward this generation from the last generation. I think there's probably some truth to that. If you look at the difference in graphics from a PS2 game to a PS3 game,
it's pretty huge.
It was pretty huge.
Yeah,
Same with the Xbox to the Xbox 360. But I actually think that's a moment of maturation for our industry because those exponential leaps, the fact that the leaps are more incremental, puts more onus on the creative.
Right. It's about the
process.
content. It's not about
it's
the
about
box.
the content. And
Right.
It's about a great interactive experience, a great immersive gameplay experience, a world that you want to inhabit and explore. And I think that's a good thing for games because it's a maturation for us as a medium. At the beginning of the last console cycle, the biggest games in the world were mostly movie games.
Yeah.
Right. You had characters. We had some of them. I think Activision with Spider-Man
and stuff. Sure.
were huge.
Absolutely.
Huge games. In the last console cycle, or in the current one, the medium has matured to the point where now the most popular games are built on characters and stories that are indigenous to games, right? So, it morphed from Spider-Man and borrowed interest from movies to characters that were born in video games. So I think that's another moment where it's like, interesting. Now we're building our own mythologies. When we started Skylanders, before it was out, one of the questions I got most was, okay, compelling idea, bringing toys to life in a game, but why make your own toys? Why not team up with someone who's already got a very established toy line, and you can provide the game part.
Sure.
And I felt at the time, and I'm so it's glad that we've been proven right, but I felt at the time, boy, it feels like a big underestimation of games as a medium capable of launching its own characters, its own worlds, its own mythologies, in and of itself. And I think games are a wonderful medium for that. And Skylanders has really proven it.
Skylanders takes the world of Spyro, a classic game character,
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
right.
Thanks very much, Eric.
Thanks
and for more Gamescom coverage, check out Engadget.com.